What's going on? We only have two more lectures in this whole class, and we have been in ancient systems pretty much the whole time. Part of that is because I'm not actually an expert about modern society. I'm not an expert about the history of the region either. The things that I have my degrees in are the ancient systems. So I've tried to give you stuff that I know that you don't know. When you guys are doing your final presentations, I hope that you try to find a way to give us something, us meaning me and the other students, right? Give us something that you know that maybe the rest of the other people in the room don't know, right? I've been teaching this kind of class for a little while, and presentations are really my favorite part because that's the part where I get to learn the most. Sorry, you guys are probably getting some wind off that fan. So I would try to say that if you're trying to think of something to do for your final presentation, just try to be original. Try to be original. Try to do something that you know about, right? Some people's families have connections in places that are interesting. Like, like some people know about things that are happening in the country that other people don't know about. And some of these things are like, there are many little tiny cultures within Thailand that are disappearing. Because with the internet and with the standardization of everything, the world is happening like that. If you go back 300 years and you try to say, like, how many languages are being spoken in the world 300 years ago, it's a lot more than now, right? Because if you could pick the ability to speak 10 languages, what would those 10 languages be? They'd be very popular ones, probably, right? And so everybody is making that choice all the time, and languages are disappearing. I just read a paper that my friend wrote the other day about how there are many linguistic groups in Thailand that are disappearing, and their cultures are disappearing. And these people are trying to learn Thai, be Thai, and assimilate into Thai culture, make some money, feed their families and everything, but they want to keep their cultures. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but a lot of this comes from the dichotomy between lowland people and highland people. And we're going to talk about that in these next two lectures. It's the idea that, like, the lowland people accepted agriculture and the highland people were like, I don't want to do that. That's boring. We're going to go up into the mountains where you don't want to go, and we're going to hide up there, and we're going to do what we want to do. So a lot of people have chosen the highlands because they love freedom. They want to get away from the low-dwelling people. They don't want to pay taxes. They don't want to fight in the military. They don't want to fight in the war for some faraway capital. And that's what they would be. They'd be nothing, because they're not coming into the game with a bunch of money. There's a people, I'm going to have to look this up for you, but there's a people who, like, 1,000 years ago, they were doing agriculture, and then they decided, to heck with this agriculture thing, let's go back to being nomads. And they were a nomadic culture within Thailand. And then that's no longer working out for them. Because, hunter-gatherers, you can only hunt and gather on land that, doesn't belong to people. And there's not a whole lot of land that doesn't belong to people now. So yeah, that's something that we'll dig into here. So if you have any contact with a culture that's vanishing, that would be really interesting. If you take, when we were talking about animism, if you take a story from your family that's animistic about Jauti, origin story, some kind of ghost, anything like that, it wouldn't seem like it's super academic, but it's original. And this is a class about culture. And you are from the culture, 99% of you are from the culture that we're talking about. So if you present something that's a piece of the culture that we're talking about, that's right on point. So I guess all I got to tell you is be original. Just be original as you can, right? Try to bring in specific knowledge. Try to bring in something that you know that maybe not everybody else in the room knows. You know, maybe some other people in the room are going to know, but not everyone is going to know. Educate us, right? It's time for you to be a teacher. All right, cool. So this is going to be China Part 3. We're also going to cover a little bit of Islam. We're also going to cover a book called Socially Engaged Buddhism by Ajahn Sulak Sivaraksa. He's a friend of the College of Music. I met him. He's a really cool guy. He's super old now, but he's a controversial character, but he's really awesome. He's a really awesome guy. So I've given you some of his text. And then we will dig into some modern disconnected topics. One of the things that is very hard to make sense of in a culture course is that we're studying, you know, the culture of this region, but the culture of this region has had to fight off colonization directly from a lot of different angles. The Japanese were here recently trying to make it happen. Falang, you know, we're here trying to make it happen. They got kicked out of Ayutthaya for trying to convert the Buddhist monks to Christianity, and the Buddhist monks were not feeling that, so the French got kicked out. The word Falang comes from Falangset, and Falangset meaning French people. You know that, of course, you know that, right? But that's from contact during the Ayutthaya period. So let's dig in to where we were last week. I said something that I don't mean totally, right? I said something here. Are Thai Chinese people the real Chinese people, right? And I said that maybe to fire some people up about culture. And I can't say anything like that in the West because people cry. Because in the West, people like to cry now. But I know you guys are a little bit tougher. And I'm hoping that kind of like snapped you into, like wanting to write something like, oh, what the heck are you talking about? I've asked this question before and I get some answers where students get kind of fired up and they're like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I like. Bring it, you know? And that's good stuff. If you get emotional about something, you start thinking a little bit harder about it. But one of the reasons that I was saying that is that in China, they had something called the Cultural Revolution, and communism in general, in trying to create equality, kind of decided that it had to get rid of the older culture. And that was something that you saw in Marx's doctrine, is Marx saw factory life for workers. And he said, you know, there's no, it doesn't really matter that you're men or women or children. We are all food for the factories. We're just in there grinding our lives away so that these factory owners can get richer. And it doesn't matter if you're white or black. It doesn't matter if you're from this country or that country. It doesn't matter if you speak this language or this language. We're all food for their machine. And we gotta fight them. You know, there's this very strong us-them thing. And in trying to make a communist government, making the us truly unified was something that they tried really hard to do. And people who thought differently were often enemies of this. And also, more ancient cultures didn't make this easy for them. So it was kind of like a situation where you can fight me on this. But it was kind of like a situation where the communist movement tried to like plow a field, like take all of the ideas that had taken root and tear them up, and then just like poison the whole area so that nothing can grow, and then start new by planting a new field, like a farmer, but with people's minds. Is that too heavy? Up to you. You know, like if you're a fan of communism, you can come to the defense of communism in your final paper and say, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. Communism is great, and this is why. And I'd love to do that. I'd love to listen. I love it when people disagree with me. So one of the things that I see happening, this is a story that I'm going to say is, you know, maybe it's 70% true. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not true. This is kind of a story. And the story is communism started to happen in China, and there were a lot of people who were living in China, and they were like, I like the old ways. I really like the old ways. And the communists don't like the old ways. They're fiercely anti-religion. The old ways are religious, and we like our ancient culture. It's, one of the deepest, oldest cultures on the entire planet. We like this culture. And a lot of people took off to other countries, and they were like, I'm getting the heck out of here. And the people in Thailand who are Chinese, a lot of them came over here during this era, and then within a couple of generations successfully assimilated into Thai culture. But Thai Chinese culture is not the same as Thai culture. Like it's a part within Thai culture, but at the same time, it like always must be represented. And the first I really knew of Thai culture was from Japanom, from Tony Jaa, from Ong Bak, the Thai warrior, right? He and in that, the main characters are Japanom, who's from up north, like up in the country, and he comes here to find his friend who's from the country too, but he doesn't act like it, he doesn't talk like it. He acts like, no, I'm Bangkok. I'm like a Bangkok kid, I'm not from the countryside. So they do this like country city thing. And Japanom is like, come back to your roots. You don't have to be some cool city boy. Come on, come back to your roots, And like Japanom will only trust him when he starts to speak to him in like the language of their village. So when he switches from this like Bangkok slang and starts talking to him like, oh, I am a country boy. And you notice also that like when that boy, his friend, when he goes back to his city, he will what, like it's showing that he's like returned to the culture. So basically, like there's a lot of times where I'll see a Thai film, and it seems like they have asked the government, like, yo, like, can we have a bunch of money to make this film? And the government's like, yeah, but you got to like put all these elements of Thai culture in there and make them look like really super awesome. And I feel like Ong Bak, the Thai warrior, was kind of like a homework assignment for Sangkom class, because there's so much stuff in that movie that was all like, it's all like making the Thai stuff happen, and it's all really amazing. But there were no beaches. Like nobody's like, oh, look at the beautiful beaches. They weren't doing that. They were like, they were showing like so many other elements of Thai culture. And one of them was there's like a Chinese girl in there, and her name means they I don't know what her name is, but they keep calling her a word that I can't say right that means Chinese girl. And it's like Thai culture wouldn't be complete unless you had a Thai Chinese character in there, like, so those three are like the main characters, the three friends, the three, like good guys. So it's like Thailand kind of says yes to everything, but it never ever gets taken over. It's really pretty amazing. All right, let's keep going. So I'm stoked to be reading answers to this question. And if you didn't come at it yet, I think it's interesting. And the reason I said it was, I think during the Cultural Revolution, a lot of people were like, I want to keep my culture. And so the ancient character of the Thai Chinese community, I think, remains, and the mainland Chinese community is less ancient. So I guess I would say the community that's here is more keen to observe ancient stuff than mainland. But you can fight me on that, because like I said, I don't know. Like people who left to the other countries of Southeast Asia, there's a lot of diaspora people in Malaysia and in Indonesia. And if you look up the Wikipedia page for middleman minority, it kind of tells the story of Chinese people who have joined Chinese communities in these different places, become really successful, and provided a lot of services, and ended up raising up the culture of the area. So they're a minority that is welcomed because of their ability to take care of stuff really, really well. So this if you look up middleman minority and just look at that Wikipedia page, it's pretty interesting. It's a short page too. All right, let's keep going. So what are the elements in Thai culture that we can see. I'm going to give you just like single slide ideas, and one of them is the Chinese zodiac is accepted by Thai culture to the point where it's on your Thai national ID. If you were born in the year of the snake, that's on your Thai national ID. So these words in Thai are not. They don't. It's not Gatai and Sua and Wua and No and Mo and Ma and Gai and Ling and I don't know who you are, Pat or Ga or something, and Ma and what are you? You're a snake, and that's Mangon, right? But it's not. Those aren't the words. Those aren't the words. They're other words, right? It's like Shuat Chalo. Like there's different words. So and those words are not Chinese. So it's like there's a special language that's set up within Thai culture that means that like the Chinese ideas have like a permanent place. Okay. This one's really cool. I don't know if you've ever seen the Jackie Chan cartoon. I love Jackie Chan. I couldn't avoid talking about Jackie Chan. He's so awesome. He's always like beating people up, and he's always like, I don't want no trouble. I don't want no trouble. And then like they're throwing around these priceless Chinese vases, and he's catching the priceless Chinese vase and kicking their, just beating them up at the same time. So he made a like cool Chinese culture cartoon. It was called like the Adventures of Jackie Chan or something. And he's an archaeologist, and he's looking for these talismans, and each one has a superpower. And there's a big evil dragon who's trying to come back from the dead, and he's always fighting the evil dragon and his army of ninjas that are called Shadow Khan. That's really awesome. The Avatar cartoon is amazing. I also strongly recommend the Jackie Chan cartoon. Okay, so this is amazing, and this is a huge part of Thai culture, right? Samgok. You hear all the time that if there's Samgok right there, that if somebody reads Samgok 3 times, then they're too smart and they can't be handled. And I remember my wife's father is talking about who is the smartest guy in Samgok, and I'm like, oh, like everybody would say Kong Bang, and then some people are like, no, it's Chow Chow, Jocho, right? Jocho, because he doesn't even have a Kong Bang. He has to be his own Kong Bang. He has no like great military advisor. And then Grandpa says, no, it's the author. The author's the smartest guy in Samgok. So it's called Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Sometimes it's just kind of called Three Kingdoms, but it's a story about like the ancient past when the Han dynasty was declining, but they wanted Liu Bei, Lao Pi is trying to restore the glory of the Han. The emperor is still from the Han clan, but these warlords are fighting over the emperor. But it was not written back then. It was written like, I think it was maybe 500 years ago, but it was written pretty recently. But it's a classic, right? So it's from the Three Kingdoms period, and this is about almost 2,000 years ago, and it was a time when the China was split into 3 lands, right? And you can see that these area with the Uyghurs right now is nowhere near these ancestral lands. It's way out into the steppe. So Dong Zhou, I can't pronounce these guys' names, but he was a cruel tyrant, right? And the thing that was so scary about him is he had this dude here, Lu Bu, who was the best warrior in the world. He was such a bad dude, and he even had a magic horse called Red Hair. And Zhou Chou, Cao Cao, decides he's going to assassinate this guy because he's taken the emperor as a puppet, and he's ruling as a tyrant. He's a really bad dude, and this dude is like, hey, I'm gonna step up and assassinate this guy. And he goes in there and he's gonna assassinate him, and then he realizes like he can't do it for whatever reason, or he doesn't want to die, and he tries to escape, ends up escaping, but the problem is this Lu Bu. He can't fight Lu Bu, and Lu Bu is he's defending this evil warlord until they have a little bit of a problem. There's a there's a saying about him, and they say, among men, Lu Bu, among horses, red hair. And it means like Lu Bu is the greatest of men, and the red hair is the greatest horse, right? So there he is being a bad dude. So he loves this woman called Dio Chan, right? But this evil guy's like, oh, I love her too. So he can't help himself, and he yang Lu Bu. He like tries to take her as his own wife, and Lu Bu is not feeling that. So Lu Bu ends up murdering him. Lu Bu tends to murder people. So Lu Bu loves Dio Chan, and he gets pretty mad and ends up murdering this evil dictator, right? And then he goes on to have this really cool epic career. At some point, he ends up being a lord. He's like in charge of this area, but he's not good at politics at all. He's just a great warrior, and all of the people around him start falling into chaos. He's supposed to be like managing them and keeping these clans together, but they just keep insulting each other, and then it looks like they're gonna go into this big giant war. And Lu Bu just doesn't care. He just keeps getting drunk and hanging out with his beautiful wife and like enjoying his life. And he's like, you guys are just a bunch of, why are you always complaining? You guys suck. You know, he's just not taking the situation seriously at all. And it looks like it's all terrible. And, you know, everything's going to heck. And one day Lu Bu just looks at these guys and says, who's your greatest archer? Who's the best at shooting arrows? And, one guy, you know, he's super, he's like, though I am of no talent, I can shoot an arrow from 300 meters and hit the thing, you know. And then, okay, that's your team. What about your team? You know, like, who's your greatest archer? Oh, though I am of very little talent, you know, like, I'm always very humble, you know, like, I could shoot an arrow for 400 meters, you know, like, looks over at him like, you know, and Lu Bu says, how about this? It's a windy day outside right now. I'm going to set up my halberd, his like cool spear. I'm going to set up my spear 500 meters away. And if I can hit the feather of my halberd 500 meters away, everybody's laughing. They're like, that's a completely impossible shot. And it's windy and you're drunk. And he's like, whatever. Just if I hit this thing, you guys all have to shut up and go home, and you can't have a war, right? You have to have peace. And everyone's like, that's impossible. We really want to have a war. We really hate each other, but you can't make that shot. That's ridiculous. All right, fine. We agree, you know? And so they all agree. Lu Bu walks over there. He grabs his arrow. Everybody's like, God, this guy is just a terrible leader, and he's just so irresponsible, and there's no way any human being can hit that thing from that far away. And like, you know, he winds up his arrow, bam, nails it. Where's my wine? You know, he's just like, he's such a demigod, you know? So, but that was when he was working for Liu Bei, Lao Pi, right? And he was working for him then, right? But he ends up turning on him, and he ends up fighting Guan Yu. And him and Guan Yu fighting against each other is like a super epic battle. They ride into battle against each other, like, you know, I think they say it's like 70 rounds, and they're both on horsebacks, and they like, you know, tire their horses out and break all their weapons. And I can't stop fighting Lu Bu, and because they're both like gods, you know, and they just fight each other forever. And I can't remember if anybody ever wins, but it's like the most epic fight, right? So that was when he was working for Liu Bei. And Liu Bei is, he actually might be a legit emperor one day, because he's in the family of the Han, and he wants to restore the duty of the Han, and he always seems like a good person. I don't like him because he doesn't listen to Kong Bang, and I like Kong Bang. I'm a nerd. I like smart people. So the three brothers in the peach tree who make the promise that they're going to be brothers for the rest of their lives are Liu Bei, and he's so lucky because the people around him are so talented. And that's something to learn from yourself. If you have a bunch of really talented, brilliant, wonderful people around you, your life is going to be good. So make good friends, cherish your friends. Your friends will take good care of you. That's something you learn from Sam Gok, you know. Liu Bei, I mean, I hate to hate on Liu Bei, but he's not that awesome. You know, he's just, the thing that's so awesome about him is that his two brothers are these invincible warriors who are super amazing, and then he finds the best military advisor in the world in Kong Beng, Zhuge Liang. You know, and then he's got everything because everybody around him is amazing. So it's like he can't lose because everyone around him is so great. Okay, so Guan Yu, you can see him in a bunch of business places. It's like people want the power of him as a warrior, but he's also a tap because of his loyalty, his ability to be loyal is so powerful. And I always wonder if that's because the leaders want to inspire that kind of loyalty in the people around them, or if they are thinking that Guan Yu is important because he's such a badass warrior. This is on one of the islands. You see him all over Thailand. And he's always red. And he has become a legit god. And he's a character from a book, right? Okay. So these are the three of them pledging to always be brothers. Super metal. And then, of course, Kong Beng. I had a Kong Beng fan. I don't know where it is right now. But I had one of these things that was pretty cool. He's like sometimes called a Taoist sage, and he can get down with nature. And there was a time where he changed the wind in order to make an attack not possible for his enemy. He could do anything. He's so cool. Love Kong Beng. A Zhuge Liang Valentine. No need to devise complex stratagems, my Valentine. I am already in your heart, just waiting for you to realize it. So he's super awesome, man. And there's a period of time where Liu Bei is like falling in love with some beautiful woman and kind of like abandoning his responsibilities. And Zhuge Liang ends up fighting against the Grand Commander of the Southland. Because in the beginning it was like Zhou Chou, Cao Cao versus the Southland, and the Southland has a lot of, that's the one that has the really young leader. He's like a young kid and ends up being a leader. He ends up being really good leader. But the Southland and Liu Bei, they end up fighting against each other. Like that's they break their alliance against Zhou Chou, and Zhou Chou is such a bad dude. He's so smart, and he's always winning, and he doesn't really have anybody great around him. There's not a lot of big names that show up around him until the end. But Sun Tzu has a book called The Art of War, which I think I have on my and it's old. But the Art of War was old when Kong Beng existed, because at some point he's arguing with Liu Bei, and he says Liu Bei says, the art of war says blah, 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 blah. And Kong Beng says, the art of war is not always correct, you know? And which is awesome, because it's like, well, I mean, if Kong Beng is saying that, I agree with Kong Beng. But there's also a book called The War of Art. If you want to figure out how to get your creative power on point, Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art. That's a really good book too. Oh yeah, here it is. Okay. So war, right? There's a ton of war happening. And Zhuge Liang is fighting against the Grand Commander of the Southland, and his name is Gong Jin. But he's the Grand Commander, and he's super metal. He's really awesome, but he's trying to make strategies that are better than Kong Beng's strategies, and that just doesn't work. You can't do that. You can't mess with Kong Beng. He's Kong Beng, man. So here you see he's got this blood on his mouth because he keeps having he's so stressed out because Kong Beng is so he's so smart that he keeps beating him, and he's like losing all the time, so he keeps like losing his mind about how smart Kong Beng is. And here these are wonderful. So this is the Grand Commander Gong Jin, and he says, yo, Liu Bei, you did some dumb stuff that Kong Beng told you not to do, and now you're lost and you don't know what the heck's going on, you Mai Lu Liang. But and we've surrounded you, so you have to surrender. You know, like he's trying to catch up with Liu Bei, but So, this is Kong Beng's guy. He's captured the high ground, and there's you, there's all these military principles in there, like don't charge against the high ground when somebody has captured the high ground. So, you know, they're like, well, we could just easily fire arrows at all of your people and kill them, and you can see that right away. This is just a completely losing battle, but he still throws all of his men at him, and here we go. He says, we have a message. And there they are. There they are going away with their navy. And see, he's slowly dying. It's pretty funny. It's not funny that he's dying. I'm sorry to say that. But then he ends up at the funeral. So now he has died from the stress of fighting against Kong Beng, because Kong Beng, everything that he ever tries to do, Kong Beng destroys them, and just every single thing that happens, he's losing, and he just can't fight them. And at that point, they had Liu Bei stuck because they lured him into a wedding. He ends up marrying this bride, and then he says, "I'm going to take her back." And they say, "You can't take her back. You're kind of our prisoner now." And he's like, "I won't be your prisoner. I'm the I'm the lord of this place over here. Like, if we're united in marriage, we're united in marriage." But they end up having a lot of conflict still. So he just can't outmaneuver Kong Beng because Kong Beng is just too smart. He's super awesome, but that's it. And so this is his funeral. This is the funeral of the Grand Commander who died from stress because of Kong Beng. And they're all crying at the funeral. And then Kong Beng shows up. I can't do the sound, sorry. But he shows up, and they see that that's the enemy general. The enemy general comes in, and he's like making these big speeches about how amazing the director general was. He was so brilliant, and he was so awesome, and he's been his enemy the whole time, and he's just like crying and like talking about how amazing this dude was. And then like everybody in the opposing like army general stash, they all start crying too because they were like remembering him too. So he goes there. He's the reason that he's dead. But he goes there and he's just really, really upset that he's dead because he had so much respect for him. The dude couldn't beat him at anything, but he was like, he could see how intelligent he was because he's normally dealing with a bunch of mere mortals. And so Kong Beng shows up, and he's like crying over the death of his enemy. So that's something that shows you like just kind of like the honor culture that's really deeply baked in there. Samguk is so amazing. And then I just got to show you this because it's the greatest thing I've ever seen. This is some more stratagems, right? So this dude rolls up on Zhou Chou with a greatly superior force. Zhou Chou is just going to get like run over, and he says, "Okay, set up a tent in the middle of the battlefields, and we'll talk about terms like basically like you have a huge army, you're ready to go. I have a tiny little army, I'm not ready to go. Like you're totally going to win. Let's talk about terms." So he goes and he talks with him and has tea with him, and this guy's like, "Oh, I hate you. You're terrible." And but Zhou Chou is just such a good storyteller that he like keeps him talking for a few hours. And then at that point, the sun goes down in the sky, and then he says, "It's the sun is setting now. You're you've just been talking so much. Are we going to talk about terms or not? And he goes, terms, okay. He goes, just so you know, as long as I am alive, I will never surrender to any human being. I will especially never surrender to you, but I'll never surrender to any human being. You know, like if a god showed up and mounted his army ahead of me, I wouldn't surrender to him either. Well, then what are these terms that you're talking about? Terms? And he just looks at him and laughs. And this is like the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I love him running away too. It's Jocho Nalak Makle. He's just wonderful. So this is just a couple moments from the Samgok TV show that was so good. This Jocho character is just constantly outsmarting people. So yeah, there's a bunch of cool war stuff that's happening, but it's always based on strategy, and from those strategies, people should be able to derive principles for living their lives that are good. So like one of the things that China brings into Thailand is this deep game of strategy. Okay, so the thing about Jocho though is that he's seen often as a villain because he had imprisoned this child emperor, and he was kind of like using him as a puppet. At some point, Jocho declares himself emperor to. Wait a minute. Jocho's son declares himself the emperor, and I don't think Jocho ever does declare himself the emperor. He is holding the emperor. He doesn't do anything really bad to him ever, but he has him imprisoned against his will, and he's saying, "Oh, I'm just a servant of the emperor." And everybody's like, "We know that's not true. You have him imprisoned, just like the guy that you said you were going to assassinate." And he's like, the emperor is portrayed as just a young boy. There's no evidence that this young boy could bring peace and stability to the Three Kingdoms era. And Jocho is always saying throughout this rendition that, like, I think history might remember me differently. Maybe history will remember me differently. But he's like seen as like a bad guy in from all around. He looks like this villain, but sometimes he'll say, he's like, I think history might remember me differently. And if you see him, he doesn't seem like so much of a villain. It's not Samgok is not so much like good versus evil. It's just, Three Kingdoms. All right. So towards the end, a lot of characters die. I'm not gonna tell you who dies. But there's a final showdown because Jocho finally does get a military advisor who's awesome. And it's this character right here. And spoiler alert, his family is extremely well connected. And Kongbeng is finally having trouble with this guy because Kongbeng he's not an emperor. He doesn't have complete control over the place. Liu Bei is doing stupid stuff and not listening to Kongbeng, and he just keeps ending up in these really tough situations where he's losing out. Liu Bei's son ends up being an emperor, but like by that point, Jocho is just running a better state. And he has severely depleted forces, and even his brilliance can't hold back from this guy. He's Sima Yi, and Kongbeng starts to get really stressed out about Sima Yi too. He's Sima Yi. He's very upset about Sima Yi all the time because he's so gang. And Sima Yi has his sons with him and stuff, and he's always careful to be so cool to the Chao clan and everything, and they're like, oh, they're not honoring us. And just shut up. You guys just shut up. Everybody shut up. And if you don't know what happens in history, it just seems like, why is he being so humble? But then at some point at the very end, him and his family, who's a huge, well-connected family, ends up completely taking over, and they become the next dynasty of China. That's the end of the Three Kingdoms period, comes with his family taking over the country and being the next dynasty. So there's a lot of times, if you watch the TV show, it's 95 hours long. It's so long. I'm sure it's not on Netflix, and I bet I don't even get copyright busted for putting this on YouTube because it's just so free, you know. Like I watched this years ago, and it's probably from 2010s, maybe 2012, something like that. But it's a really well done 95 hours of Samguk. You should watch it; it's really fun. But like, there's a lot of this stuff happening where Kong Beng just he's like, don't worry. I fortified that area with 100,000 men. There's no way that he could get through there. Oh, well, Liu Bei didn't listen to you, and he instead did this. And he's just always like falling down because Liu Bei does something stupid. And why didn't he listen to me? And there's like many scenes where he's just like, he's given his entire life to trying to restore the Han and trying to get this state to win. And so he gets really upset when people don't listen to him. So that's Samguk, right? And if you want to see that one more time, he's always very upset. And Kong Beng is my favorite character in there, obviously, but it's such a beautiful story, and it has a very strong effect on the culture of the region. Everybody knows Samguk. Okay. So some other things that would be interesting for you guys to talk about in presentations that I don't know much about would be like feng shui. And I think that this means wind and water. And Kong Beng is, you see his fan, he uses his fan to change the wind sometimes. But there's a lot of this straight up Taoism. And there's a lot of ideas that Taoism and sorcery get along really well. And feng shui is part of that. Like it's a similar situation where you're trying to manipulate the laws of nature / magic in order to create luck, in order to make good energy flow into your life. And I hear a lot about this stuff when families are looking to buy houses, start businesses. There's this white tiger, Huomengon, like there's a lot of considerations people have. You can't have the front door and the back door in a parallel configuration because then something will happen. You have to put down the lid of the toilet because your money will go down the toilet or something. There's a lot of I don't know how to put it. It's not like I don't know how to put it. It's an interesting form of superstition, and one of the things that I've heard is similar to what we were saying when we talked about animism, where once you start having relationships with these animistic spirits, it's like your faith makes them real. I think feng shui is similar to that. If only like placebo effect style. Like if you believe this thing is real, then it's real, and you'll make it happen, right? Or maybe it is real, but it doesn't affect non-believers. I don't know at all. And that's one of the things that I was saying about looking at anything that exists in the United States. It's like these rules just don't work over there. It's just too far away from this world. But yeah, feng shui is something that I'm really interested in, and I don't know very much about. TV white. So this is something that would be an interesting presentation. I think that like a lot of people who are more recently of Chinese descent, thus they have lived in a colder culture longer, thus they have lighter skin. When I look at the TV, I just see people who are so ridiculously white all the time. Like everybody's white. And that's one of the things that I noticed when I first came over here. Like my first days here, my first weeks here, I would be walking through the streets and I'd be looking at people. And the people look like people from Southeast Asia, right? And then I walked into 7-Eleven and I look at all the magazines and I look at all the products and I'm like, these people all look like they're from northern China. Like these people are all like bleached white. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like why would all the products and all the media have people that don't look like the people who live here? And I mean, that might be a stupid question, but it's a question that I don't understand. And another thing that happened, this is a story I always remember about this whiteness thing. which we haven't talked about very much, but I find it interesting. I was on an island, coming around a corner in a taxi, and there was one Thai person in the car, and the taxi driver, and we came around this corner and we could see this little window into a party, and it was some like crazy party going on, and there was a really super beautiful woman like right in the middle of the scene, and she just I think maybe she had something like a drink in her hand or something, and she took a drink, and it was like all in slow motion, and she was just like incredibly beautiful. Like that was the thing that like you would remember if you look at this person. It's incredibly beautiful, and there's a bunch of us packed into the taxi, and we're like, everybody's eyes are on her, and that the one Thai girl in the car goes, the taxi driver says da 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 da, and like kind of laughs to himself, and the one Thai girl in the car says, "Do you know what he just said?" And I'm like, "No, like I've just moved here. I can't speak Thai at all yet." And she goes, "You're gonna laugh. That that girl. Did you see that girl?" "Yeah." And everyone's like, "Yeah." What do you think? What do you think of that girl? And everybody's like, "She's ridiculously beautiful." Like everybody's like, "Wow, she's so beautiful. She's so beautiful." And she's like, "That guy just said, he just said some like insulting things about how she's so ugly. She's so ugly because her skin is dark." And like every guy in the car was like, "What? What?" Because it was like, the thing that was so crazy was that like what all of the Westerners in the car was seeing was just like, "Oh, she's ridiculously beautiful. She's like, like alien level beautiful, like crazy, like shouldn't even exist level beautiful." And then that guy's like, "Her skin isn't white, therefore not beautiful." And like she knew she could see both cultures at the same time. Like she was the one person who could see what he was seeing and what we were seeing at the same time. And I think that you guys are all living in that world also, where you see the kind of like, it's not like racism, but it's like colorism, where like, and I think they have this in India as well, but I'm not sure. And I don't think they have it in China as much, but I'm really not sure. But it doesn't exist in the West. It's something that like we really don't have. Westerners will, as soon as they can, like we have a long winter. Most of us have a long winter in the United States, and as soon as we can get outside and get sun on our skin so that we will get darker, we will try to do that. And if you see the Westerners in 7-Eleven all the time, I just always remember this. Somebody's like picking up some sunscreen and they're like, "This sunscreen, it says it'll make me white. Like, I don't want the sunscreen to make me white. I just want it to like keep me from getting like sunburn. Do you have any sunscreen that won't make me white? Like, I don't want to be white. I just want to not get burnt, okay?" And like the girl from 7-Eleven is like, "Sawadee Kashanka," like she doesn't know what's up. But like Westerners just don't. This is something that doesn't make sense. And one of the things, like if you go into philosophy, John Locke, he wrote a lot of political stuff, but he also wrote something about essay about human understanding, about knowledge, and he said that like there are some things that are primary characters and some things that are characteristics and some things that are secondary characteristics. And he said that the color of an object is a secondary characteristic because only the eyes see it and it can't be confirmed by any other sense, which basically means like if you think my jacket is blue and my shirt is yellow, and then like one day you get hit in the head and then like you see that I'm wearing like a yellow jacket and a blue shirt, you'd be like, what? Wait, like his shirt used to be yellow and it used to be blue, and the person talking to you would be like, "Yeah, well, I mean, it's still that color." "No, it was different like a week ago." "No, it wasn't." It's only like a personal experience. It's just color. But shape, on the other hand, shape is like something that you can also touch. So it's like it's more real. So I don't know. It seems like the Westerners are more focused on the physical structure of human beings that they find attractive, and then here it's more about like color. But please educate me. I'd find it interesting. Hot food, cold food. That's another thing that I don't understand. Um, you can't eat this because you're gonna get a cough. Don't eat ice or you're gonna get a cough or something. Or like don't have don't have chips or you're gonna cough or something. And like I don't. There's like a lot of things about food that trace back to China that I just don't believe in. One that's in Thai culture is durian. Durian plus alcohol equals death. Like every Falang that tries durian for the first time tries it on Khao San Road while they're drunk. Like it doesn't. I don't think that there's any reason that durian would make you die. There's another one that if you get rained on, then that's a terrible thing, and you're probably gonna become sick from the rain. And that's something that like maybe you guys, if you have more of a scientific background, I'd like anybody to explain how the rain would make you sick in any way, because that's something that I personally don't believe, and I don't know any foreigner like Falang. I don't know any Falang that believes it at all. And before the pandemic, the masks thing was weird because people would wear masks when they got sick, like, and I had never seen a person wearing a mask in public until I was about 30 years old. I was in Canada and I saw a girl walking around with a mask on. And I remember looking at her and just thinking, I wonder if she has like she's had like some horrible problem with her lungs or something, and now she has to walk around with a mask on for a while, or like maybe she has like a severely compromised. I kept like thinking like, why would a person walk around with a mask on? But like then when I came here, I saw people would be wearing masks, and I'd be like, why are you wearing a mask? Oh, I'm sick. And then they seemed to think that the mask, most of the people I would ask about this would think that the mask would protect them from becoming more sick. And I'm like, well, that's not what it is. But it's a good thing because people who are sick walking around, they could spread their germs everywhere. And if they walk around wearing a mask, that's good for society. But people did not say that was why they were doing it. They said it was like to protect themselves, which is not science and not true as far as I know. But I'm curious about a lot of things. But these are a few things. The hot food, cold food thing, is any of that real at all? Durian plus alcohol does not kill you. I have tested it. Will the rain make you die? I think no. One of the possibilities that I'd see for that would be like if you're in Bangkok and rain lands on a disgusting building and then it like falls off that disgusting building onto your head, you're getting like gross stuff on your head. But like rain that's just falling through the sky onto your head, I mean, if it's falling through a cloud of PM 2.5 particles and then onto your head, yeah. But now with the pandemic, we don't really have the pollution that we used to, and it's also not pollution time. Like the time of the weather is the best. Like January is such beautiful weather, but then like we always get PM 2.5, so nasty in January. Like if it rains on you, then maybe it's bad. So I don't know. I don't know why would the rain make you sick. If you could explain that to me, that might be a good presentation. Bodhisattva, that is not Theravada Buddhism at all, right? Guan Yin is a bodhisattva, and she's very Chinese. She's not Thai. But the idea of a bodhisattva, you guys say. We say bodhisattva. That's more the Sanskrit version, but that's a Mahayana Buddhist concept. The Monkey King, yeah. Let's talk about him. So, oh yeah, fairness cream. I find this really interesting. Let's dig into this a little bit. Okay. So, there's a lot of this like whitening cream. This is pretty interesting. Let's let this ride. So apparently she's dark and not beautiful. So you see what's happening there is he's like, oh, you can't possibly be from India. You must be a foreigner and therefore beautiful. So this is one of those things where it's like, yeah, we probably can sell this idea, but sometimes it really backfires. That's one of the most like egregious versions of it. This one, of course, this one's really famous. Let's watch it anyway. Of course, you've seen it before, but let's watch it anyway.
คุณรู้อะไรไหมกว่าคริสจะมาถึงตรงนี้ได้การแข่งขันมันสูงมากจะอยู่ได้นานๆไม่ใช่เรื่องง่ายแล้วถ้าคริสหยุดดูแลตัวเองเมื่อไหร่ทุกอย่างที่ทุ่มเทมาความขาวที่ลงทุนไว้ก็หมดไปเด็กใหม่ที่เข้ามาแทนที่อาจทำให้เรากลายเป็นดาวดำแค่ขาวก็ชนะ ใหม่สโนว์กลูต้าเข้มข้นที่สุดผสมเมล็ดกีวีช่วยให้ไม่กลับมาดำเหมือนกลูต้าทั่วไป
Yeah. So I'm just driving home that same point. Falang are not feeling the whiteness cream. We don't understand. None of us do. But that would be an interesting presentation. I mean, sometimes I always say like, oh, I like Confucianism, like a lot of it would be like kind of an unpopular idea. But if you come at us with, this is why Confucianism is really helpful and good and stuff. But like, I think it's a little bit harder to be like, focusing on the color of your skin is like super important. Then this is why everybody should be doing it. I don't feel like somebody could successfully make that argument. But I'm like I said, I'm kind of strange. But it's something I don't understand. Oh, and here, let me head this one off. I know that like some people say like, well, white people who have white skin are rich because they don't have to go outside and work in the field, right? It's like, okay, I understand that might have made some sense 100 years ago, but we don't believe in that now, and this is why. If you go into Siam Paragon and you go to the bathroom, you're gonna see a lady who's in there cleaning the bathroom, and that she cleans that bathroom 7 days a week. And there's no sun in Siam Paragon, and she exits through a like dingy door at the end, and when she comes out, the sun is gone. When she comes in, the sun's gone. The sun never touches her, but she cleans toilets all the time. There's a lot of people who like they work in a terrible office with no windows, and they come in when the sun is low, and they leave when the sun is gone, and they never see the sun either. And then I have a bunch of friends that are rich. They're Thai, and they're always out on the beaches and going on long scuba trips and staying in Phuket for 3 months at a time, and riding their bikes up Doi Suthep, and Pitun Body Slam ran a marathon in the hot sun for months. Like these people are out doing stuff, and then they get brown from the sun, and their families own islands. Like that. I don't believe that, and neither do you. You don't believe it either. So I'm not hating on you, but it's interesting. It's interesting to see that like it doesn't really have like a ground in reality. But the other thing for me is like expensive bags. Expensive bags are funny to me, right? So these are all the things that I don't understand, and you can try to explain them to me, but I don't think it's going to work. I don't understand expensive bags. I just don't understand them. I feel like there was an intellectual fight that went on between the company and the buyer. The company won and the buyer lost. It just looks like straight up war, and the company won because they were able to sell something that's worth 1,000 baht for something that's for 1 million baht. They were able to sell a person 1,000 baht worth of materials for 1 million baht because of the existence of Coco Chanel or something. And I have no way of seeing that as anything other than the company has won a great victory over the buyer. But my mind is just set up differently than most people's minds. If you want to try to explain this to me, you can try. People have tried before, but I can't get it. It's something I don't understand. I also think that people who are wearing makeup and people who are not wearing makeup look the same to me, right? And that'll show you how weird I am. I also like heavy metal, and people don't like that. So I'm just strange. But there are some things that I kind of think I'm right about. The heavy metal isn't one of them. I know people don't like that, and I understand why they don't like that. And like my choice of art in general, right? Okay, let's get to the Monkey King. Please explain this to me. I don't get it so much. I think some of it has a chemical reality to it because of chemistry, but I don't get the Mormon cool things, because you can find stuff that's categorized as cool, but the chemistry of the situation is not consistent. And I think modern food science is superior to ancient food science. I would say there's like no part of ancient food science that is superior to modern food science in any way. I would go that far. But fight me. So this is just something I don't understand. All right. So this is something I do understand and find amazing. This is Sun Wukong Saiyu. He's extremely famous, and there's lots of movies and video games about him that are so awesome. My baby went to a house. He was this exact picture was on the wall, and my baby looks up at this Monkey King, and she thought it was awesome. And she's looking at him, and I go, "Who is that guy?" And she says, "Da da da." She said it's me. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'll take that. I like the Monkey King. And so that's one thing. Here, let's go back to this. I think this is a metaphor for Buddhism in some way, because Mahayana has lost their scriptures. They don't have the Theravada doctrine of the elders. They don't have the original texts anymore. And for Mahayana, the Dhamma is being written by many, many, many people. There are many important people, and like also, Siddhartha Gautama, the myth of the Buddha and his like that's all really important to them, but they also have like many different kinds of Buddhas that are existing in many different kinds of realms. So it's Mahayana Buddhism, super cool. It's super, super interesting, super fun. Super fun. But this situation that you have right here is really interesting, and the best way it's been described to me is as a metaphor for being a human being. So you've got this monk right here, you've got the Mo, and then you've got the Monkey King right here, and then you've got this blue guy here. And the idea that I saw was this is the like the spirit, the soul, like the what did we talk about before? The buddhi. The buddhi is like the part of the soul in Hinduism that's trying to drive the self towards enlightenment, but connection to the material world is holding the soul back. But this is like the purity inside of somebody, right? And then these three things are the delusions, the klesha, right? And there are many lists, but there's one important list of three that goes through all of Buddhism, and that is hatred, greed, and delusion. And hatred has like kind of anger and power rolled up into it, and greed has lust rolled up into it, and delusion has many things rolled up into it. But the idea was that this is the purity of the soul, the Dhamma, right? That's guiding you towards good stuff, but you have to constantly control your anger and your hatred. You have to constantly control your lust and your greed, and you have to constantly control your delusion, the stupidity that we have, and the tendency to get things wrong and hold on to the wrongness, and that fuels the anger, and it also fuels lust, So this story is another story from China that's a really, really beautiful story. And I think it's also from about 500 years ago. And this is another Tep who is important in Thailand in his own right. Yeah. So the whole journey is they're going back to get the scriptures, because Mahayana lost the scriptures. They don't have the scriptures. They want to go back to the West, to India, and get the scriptures and bring them back so that they can have a connection to Buddha Vajana. And the Monkey King has superpowers, and he's like, whatever, I'll just fly there. And he tries to fly there, but he can't. You know, like sometimes he hits a wall and he comes back down, and sometimes he flies out and he flies back in the other side. And it's because there's some kind of magic that is saying you can't just fly ahead. You have to live life as a journey, and they can never separate from one another, because as much as it's painful to have your seat of wisdom constantly beset by the greed, the lust, the delusion, the anger, this is what a person is, and you can't run away from it. Pretty interesting, right? People on TV are white. Why? Right? There are people who can, I looked this up, there are people who can make money being a feng shui person, right? Big companies spend money trying to get somebody to teach them how to do their feng shui right. You know, where can I put this door? Where can I put this thing? In the West, we have IO psychologists, industrial organizational psychologists, and these people will go into Facebook or Google and they'll critique their culture. Like, hey, I know you think that it's cool to have everybody, you know, out together in a room and everybody can see each other's screens and stuff, and you know, everybody has immediate access to one another, but our research shows that people actually like their privacy. So if you give them some offices and you give them, you know, like you give them some space that's their own where they can feel privacy, they'll actually get more work done for you. That's what we have found. You know, that's an IO. They're using science for this kind of stuff, but feng shui is something that came before that, and it's a science that businesses also try to use in order to make more money. They try to use feng shui to make more money, and they'll pay these consultants a ton of money to try to make their business make more money by manipulating the elements and making the flow of money come to them. And that's interesting to me. It's not something that I personally believe in, but I'm interested in hearing what you think about this. It might be a really good presentation. Oh, here we go. This is the end of the Tao of Pu, right? He says, just how do you do it, Pu? Do what? Asked Pu. Become so effortless. I didn't do much of anything, he said. But all those things, of course, get done. They just sort of happen, he said, right? So it says Pu is the uncarved block. He is he has the Tao, right? And it's because he does nothing. And it's not that he does nothing, it's just that he allows things to happen, and he lets the elements of nature flow and doesn't try to stand in the way of them. It's a pretty cute book, so I hope you enjoyed that. So this is from the uncarved block. Be formless, shapeless. You can look up Bruce Lee saying this. It's really inspirational. I love Bruce Lee. All right, let's move on to another super influential system. I'm sorry I have the name of the Prophet Muhammad over the title, but I want to talk briefly about Islam, because Islam is number 2 in Thailand. Theravada Buddhism is number 1, but in the South we have contact with Islam, and via Islam I want to just talk about what Abrahamic religions are, so you have something to contrast against, right? So the origins of Islam come from the Fertile Crescent, right? This is like the oldest civilizations that we can think of. Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and the Euphrates. There's a rap about this. The Euphrates River. I'll give that to you. So they gave birth to Sumer and Babylonia. These are some of the most ancient cultures that we're aware of, right? The Hanging Gardens of Babylon were one of the wonders of the ancient world. And the Code of Hammurabi was one of the first ethical systems, which meant like if somebody was caught stealing, they would get their hand cut off. And that sounds hardcore, but what it used to be is if somebody was caught stealing, they would be killed. So the Code of Hammurabi tried to slow down the process by which people would be just constantly killing each other. All right, so that was important. Nomads became farmers, right? That's important. What is a nomad? Somebody who's a traveling trader, hunter-gatherer. Their ideals are freedom, independence, and they wanted to enjoy their brief life, right? and they had a lot of hospitality towards strangers. So if we look into the Abrahamic religions, the oldest Abrahamic religion is Judaism. Jews, Christians, and Muslims are people of the book, and that book is the Old Testament. Everybody accepts the Old Testament as true, right? So Judaism has its origins. You have Adam and Eve's story. They existed in the Garden of Eden. The serpent came up and said, hey, eat this apple, you're going to be like gods. Yuval Noah Harari uses this story to basically say that human beings, here he is, human beings became like gods when we had the tree of knowledge mutation. That was basically, it landed good. It was basically the ability to have complex language, and that is something that changed humans forever. It got us out of the Garden of Eden, which is when we were just silly animals, and into the business of world domination. And he calls it the tree of knowledge mutation, which is a reference to, the Adam and Eve story, right? I shouldn't go into biblical interpretations, because I'd be in there all day. But descendants of Adam and Eve would be Abraham and Sarah. Abraham is the main character in all of these religions. They're called Abrahamic religions. And he had two sons. Isaac was important for the Jews. He was the sons of Isaac were the 12 tribes of Israel. And then Ishmael was important for Islam. Right, so both of the religions trace their lineage back to the sons of Abraham. So this is the moment where Abraham, very, very old, was supposed to kill his firstborn son Isaac, and then the angel came and said, no, just kidding. You're not supposed to do it, right? But he affirmed his faith by saying, whatever God tells me to do, I'm going to do it. And so this is a heavy thing that went down. And there's a million different paintings of this. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard wrote Fear and Trembling, which was 4 versions of him taking this walk to try to, taking this walk with his son, knowing like, Dad, where's the ram? We're going to do a sacrifice up here. And, he slowly tells him, you're the ram, kid. So Moses then showed up. He renewed the covenant with God. He freed the Jews from Israel, and he was very tight with God. The Torah and the Talmud, the Ten Commandments, these are all things that came from Moses. There's Moses parting the Red Sea. That's an important little gift there. And that was when he led the Jews out of Egypt, where they had been enslaved. And all this is in the first 2 books of the Bible, Genesis and Exodus. Right? And so here's him getting up on the mountain, getting the 10 Commandments. And then we have the intro of the Messiah. The Messiah is Jesus Christ. So these are the people of the book. Jesus Christ was the Son of God. Christ is not his last name, it's his title. And the gospel is the word of Jesus Christ saying, hey, good news, we don't have to follow all those old rules. All you have to do is accept the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, and you will have the kingdom of heaven. So Jesus was crucified. He was betrayed by all the people around him. He kind of saw it coming because even though he was a human being, he was also God. He's the Son of God, but he is also God. That's complex, and we could talk about that for a long time. But because Christianity is not immensely powerful in Thai society and culture, in Southeast Asia in general, I will not go deep. So the Holy Trinity is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And that thing, when people do that, they're invoking the Trinity, the 3 natures of God. The Father, God, who was around before Jesus came. But some people say Jesus is eternal. He was always there. And some say the Trinity is outside of time. We can get into that. The Father, the Son is Jesus Christ. And then the Holy Spirit is kind of the vehicle by which Jesus was born. The Holy Spirit came to Mary, his mother, and that's why she had a kid. So she was a virgin. She's the Virgin Mary, right? and this is important for a lot of God stories. It's another origin. And remember when we talked about the Buddha had the elephant with the lotus shows up in his mother's dream, and then goes into the mother through her side, and then the Buddha is born from her side, right? Okay, so that's the Trinity. It's a complex idea. So, and then another thing I'd tell you is that there's a difference in Hinduism. You realize that you are one with everything, including God, and there's no difference. Advaita Vedanta, there is not two. All is one with everything, right, including God. But in Christianity, you don't become one with God. You can go to heaven, and in the kingdom of heaven, you can be close to God. But the difference between the creator and the created is two different things. That we're not in an Advaita Vedanta, one with everything kind of a situation in Christianity. Okay. So the Prophet Muhammad, his name is represented like that. They don't like drawing pictures of him, so you won't see a picture of him in my presentation. And he was born about 1,500 years ago. And he was part of the Quraysh family. Okay. He's described as intelligent and honest. And he was out doing these desert meditations. And at some point, an angel came and said, recite. And he started to speak the words of the Quran. He converted his wife, his cousin, and then he started converting just everybody. He also became he was the political and religious leader, and the spread of Islam from the time Muhammad had this religious revelation until his death. The spread was amazingly successful. He converted the poor, converted the slaves. Everybody was pretty worried, but they didn't have to stay worried for long because they would be his people very soon, right? So the ascent of Islam was incredibly successful. Hijra to Medina was the area that they controlled immediately. He ended up returning to Mecca, destroying the idols, and then the Kaaba was built. Acceptance through war and peace. So they converted people through war, they converted people through peace, they converted people in every way, right? And they built a lot of really amazing cities. And during the reign of Muhammad, notice this is what the Europeans would call the Dark Ages. And during the Dark Ages, it was not a dark age for Islam. Islam was making a lot of really amazing stuff happen. They had a ton of scientific and philosophical contributions to the world. And even after the death of Muhammad, the empires that grew up were enormous. They were just absolutely enormous, right? And this is kind of the area traditionally controlled by Islam, and you see that it's huge. It makes the Roman Empire look like nothing. And the other thing that you can see here is the expansion of Islam into Southeast Asia, because it didn't really end up coming up here. I used to wonder, why is Indonesia the most have the most Muslims in the world? But it makes perfect sense when you look at geographically the area that they controlled. They kind of got cut off by the Himalayas here, and then Buddhism was ridiculously strong here. So nobody let that in. But the flow from the Fertile Crescent, from the Middle East here to Indonesia, is just such an easy flow, right? So Islam in Southeast Asia is extremely strong. In Indonesia, 87% of Indonesia is Muslim. Same with Malaysia, right? Brunei as well, but Brunei is small. But these are huge population centers. So Muslim population in the world, largest in the world, would be Indonesia. So what are the beliefs? These are important to know. The main book is the Quran. There are so many ridiculously beautiful Qurans, and it's very poetic. It was the recitation of the angel Gabriel through Muhammad. It's a mix of literature poetry. It's a book of guidance, and that guidance contains religion. It also contains laws of society, laws of law in general, and laws of economics. And that's not something that a lot of other religions have in them. They would keep religion and politics separate, but in Islam, there's a lot of politics that are already laid out. One of the things that bums people out about the structure of the Quran and the Hadith is there is a doctrine that basically says whatever was written later is more true than what was written earlier, and that's not in question. So being kind of a revisionist in Islam is a little bit more difficult, and that's one of the things that the revisionists have problems, because when people who are hardcore interpret things literally and they say, well, the Quran says this and that's why we're doing this, they have a hard time saying, no, let's be a little bit more chill about this, because of this doctrine that what was written later is more true, because a lot of the stuff that was written earlier was more beautiful and the stuff that was written later is a little more hardcore, because like Muhammad was also an empire builder and a conqueror, and he was incredibly good at that. He was an incredibly good leader, but he also had to be really hardcore because this was 1,500 years ago. One had to be hardcore then. So what are the beliefs? The belief is in faith, and like I said before, this is a monotheistic religion. Believe in Allah, don't believe in other gods. Salah, prayer, 5 times per day. That's why the religion travels so well, is because all you need to do is just face east, or if you're in the west, face west, and pray 5 times a day. There's prayer areas in a lot of shopping centers in order to try to accommodate Muslims' desire to pray 5 times per day. Fasting, this is something that should exist in more religions. The Buddhists have it a little bit. The monks don't eat after noon often. Some monks, like Tamayut monks, only eat 1 meal. They just eat breakfast and that's it. Some of the fasting, like during Ramadan, you don't eat while the sun is up, and then you eat something in the morning maybe, and then you go all day. You're really hungry, and you feel that hunger. You feel like a fundamental connection to the frailty of human being, and fasting as a religious practice, I think, is a really I understand the power in it. And also, like, everybody's kind of suffering together. It seems like it would be a really excellent community building exercise that would bring a lot of people together. Like, I'm hungry, you're hungry too. And if you have a friend who's fasting for Ramadan, it's pretty difficult to want to eat a sandwich around him. You're like, oh man, I feel bad. Like, I'll wait with you until the sun goes down, then we'll eat together. So zakah is interesting because the giving is dictated pretty specifically. It doesn't say like, oh, be a good person, tambun. They say this is the percentage that you should give to the poor, and that's pretty good. And it's a pretty fat percentage. So this is a really good way of running a society, is saying we're going to take care of the poor. The Hajj is a pilgrimage to Mecca, and if you have money, you have your life taken care of, you have your stuff in order, and you are living in New York City, you should take the Hajj at some point. You should go to the motherland and take that pilgrimage and let that strengthen your spiritual commitments to your religion. And written into this is also the idea that, like, hey, if you're the only one supporting your family, you have kids, you have old people, you just really can't stop working. There's nothing saying you must do this. Like, if you're in a situation where, like, you're taking care of your family, you can't go on a big vacation across the world, even, like, your religion doesn't demand that you do it. It's like, you really should do this, unless it's not reasonable for you to do it. If it's not reasonable for you to do it, you're totally excused from it. And there's you could see why the religion is, like, really successful. And there's a lot of things where it's like, you must do this, but If you can't do this thing, don't worry. You know, like if you can give to the poor, you must. If you can go on this pilgrimage, you must. But if you can't do those things, nobody would ask you to do them. All right. So the Islamic Golden Age was really amazing. They preserved a lot of the documents that were like the ancient Greek wisdom would have been lost. So much of it would have been lost if not for the Islamic world. The Greeks, the Romans, the Byzantines, they were the fathers of the math and the sciences that we enjoy today. And there's a lot of really awesome ancient alchemical texts. And there's a list of great philosophers, but that's beyond the scope of our lecture for the day. I won't go into it. The art was really amazing. If you ever go to southern Spain, southern Spain was occupied by the Islamic empires for a long, long time, and they benefited greatly from beautiful, beautiful architecture. And Baghdad, back in the day, that was the capital of Iraq, was just like a heaven for literature, poetry, sciences, really awesome stuff. Here they are, figuring out the world. Okay, so art in the Islamic world, a lot of it was calligraphy, beautiful Qurans. Right, the language is really beautiful. My buddy who taught me about a lot of this stuff can read and write. I obviously can't. There's a lot of painting. Some of it depicts the conquests. Some of it depicts like, you know, normal, beautiful life. The architecture is amazing. So just pictures of a lot of really awesome mosques. And if you go around to the mosques of Southeast Asia, apparently my slideshow is not working, but if you go around to the mosques of Southeast Asia, there are so many amazingly beautiful places here. One of the things that I noticed about Southeast Asia in general is that the culture of Southeast Asia and Islam, the blend is very different than the culture of the Middle East and Islam. And I'm not sure exactly why that is, or if it's because of situations about the geography being a desert religion that's now taking place in island countries that are surrounded by, you know, wind and water rather than deserts, and constant military conflicts. It's very interesting. And if you have knowledge of Islam in Southeast Asia and would like to do a presentation about it, I would find that super interesting. So we just kind of clip through this with a quickness, and that's because we still have a lot to cover, and we only really have 90 more minutes of lecture time to cover it during. So I'm going to sign off now and welcome you to comment in whatever way you like. Oh, here we go. My slideshow is now finally working. Let's look at some of the beautiful architecture here in Southeast Asia. These are really amazingly beautiful places of worship. I've never seen anything like this in the U.S. They're beautiful in the U.S., but here they're amazing. This one looks like it's in the Chinese style. And that's another thing, fashion-wise, is in the West it looks like, not in the West, but in the Middle East it looks like the veil is a very, very they're very, very covered, right? And the veil is an interesting point of contention because France banned this kind of religious headscarfery in their public places, including schools. So they kind of said, we believe in the equality of the sexes, and we're taking that over the equality of religions. So your religion, we think, oppresses women. So we're going to unoppress your women. And there were a lot of women who said, I don't want to abandon this. This is something that I believe in, and this is something that I want to wear. And there was like, you know, a lot of pushback for that. That was maybe 8 years ago that France had done that. But if that's interesting to you, go ahead. But the dichotomy between Middle Eastern fashion and the Southeast Asian style, they're very, very different, because here it seems like like they're very kind of anti-fashion there, and here just not anti-fashion. It's like the head coverings are worn in these ways that are just extremely beautiful, and they have just extremely beautiful. It's a very different style, and it's like, I don't want to say that it's less hardcore, but it feels less hardcore to me. You know, there's probably some obvious reasons for that. You can, in any way you want, go through, and yeah, I've seen a lot of women wearing the headscarf and still like really kicking ass in sports, and that's always cool. But this is something that I don't know a ton about, and in general, things about fashion in Southeast Asia are things that I don't know a ton about in general, but I would like to hear about from you. Yeah. So next time we're going to cover socially engaged Buddhism, and here's the book. I gave you that text. And so don't forget to take awesome care of yourselves, and do something to be a human body. Don't just be a floating head. Go and play your instrument. Try to step away from stuff. Try to turn off the notifications sometimes. Turn off all the lights and dance in the dark. Do something human. Go for a walk after the sun has gone down. I went for a run after the sun had gone down the other day, and I was really fast, because I normally run like in the heat of the day, but I ran at night, and I'm like, oh man, I'm a lot faster without the sun. I tried to race Line Man down the street. He didn't think it was funny, but he was eventually faster than me. But I was trying to race Line Man with a mask on. That made me tired. All right. I look forward to seeing you guys for presentations, and take good care of yourselves. Peace.